Did I ever tell you about that time I moved to Australia?
This is Collabs.
Is it serious?
No, but I bet they say La Croix correctly in
I'm
Australia.
gonna teach.
Okay.
I'm gonna teach both of you to speak Australian right now. Say that for me.
Rise up, lights.
Say it again. Just
Rise
say it in
up,
your
lights.
American accent. Say it
Rise
in your
up,
American
Rise up,
accent.
lights. Rise up, lights.
Yeah.
Rise up, lights. What is it?
What you're
Razor
saying in
blades.
Australian, yes,
Is
is
razor
actually
blades. Yeah.
Rise up, lights. Rise up, lights.
So when I was there, I met a guy, and he goes, and I introduced, "Hey, I'm Michael. Who are you?" And he says, "Yeah, I'm tiny." And I'm like, "Tiny?" He says, "Yeah, I'm tiny."
Oh, is that
I
like
said,
a sarcastic thing because you're bigger than me?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I'm like, spell that for me. He goes, Tony, tiny.
Tiny.
And,
What I always wonder is when you're in the elementary school class, are they like Tay? Are the kids Tay? And they're like I, right? Like how does that actually sound? Are they like oh? It was like oh, and they're like tiny.
Yeah, but everything's a question. And I think even Australian, like you make a statement. Like, what would a statement be? Like, I like blue hats, right? I like blue hats. There would be like, I like blue hats. It's like
You're like
do you though?
Do you know? You sure about that?
oh man, we have to get some more Aussies on this show because I feel
Yeah.
like this is a deep conversation waiting to
Which
happen.
I don't think Steve is an Aussie. We're just going to go with he's not. So Steve Laureys is going to be our
How do you
guest
say his
today,
last
but
name with an
Laureys-
Australian accent?
Laurie. Yeah,
It could fit. Yeah.
maybe. That's
No,
something
Laurie.
what it is.
He has no
but
idea what he's getting into.
Laureys. We're gonna say
Laureys.
whatever. you know.
Laureys.
Mm-hmm. With Relevant Dealers on the show today. He's going to be at ASOTU. Got a booth there hanging out, and he's a big part of the ASOTU community these days, and we can't wait to have this conversation. So it's probably not going to be anything about Australia, but we hope you enjoyed that, and we hope you enjoyed this conversation. All right, Steve Laureys, thanks for joining us here on Collabs today.
Thank you. I appreciate you guys having us.
Yeah, man. So my the first question we got to ask, and if people are listening on the podcast, there's about 845 lanyards behind you with what looks like every conference since like 2001 hanging from the back there. What's your, do you have a count on the number of conferences you've been to in and outside of automotive at this point?
No, so it's funny, as I started collecting those about 10 years ago. And, it was just one of those random things where it was like, throw it in a box, and then more things were added to the box. And finally I was like, man, I should do something with this box of these, right? Either throw them away or do something with them. But there's about 70 up there right now. And, from speaker positions, exhibitor, there you go. Yes, my man. Exactly right. Like, you got to do something with it, right?
Yo, Adrian.
That's right.
You know what? These are from about the last 10 years. I
There
feel
you
like
go.
we've probably been in all the same places
Most likely.
at all the same time.
You guys need to put those together and make a quilt.
That's unbelievable.
We could escape from a third-story window with our lanyards. Easy.
Exactly right.
Yeah. Are they all auto, or have you been to like
auto.
stuff?
Almost all are auto. There's a
Really?
couple that are non-auto, but like MozCon, which isn't specifically, but
What is that?
if you like
What's that one?
DigiMarcons.
What's MozCon?
That's
MozCon is Moz SEO, so they do their yearly thing, and
okay.
but it's non-automotive specific. It's
Gotcha.
for all industries.
So which one was your favorite one, and why was it ASOTU? No.
There you go. Yeah, so I would say it's probably would have been one of the driving sales when they were first doing driving sales.
OG.
It was such a different view, right?
Yeah.
Different insight, different speakers. Just it was not that basic internet manager, basic BDC rep, first conference type thing. We got to know a lot of the meats and potatoes, and was really designed for the executive roles.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
I'm just also looking at the environment. Is there a coffee machine for every one of those lanyards as well?
I count 2, 3. Yeah.
There
That's
are
an
3
ice
coffee
machine.
pots there. That's not by accident.
Do they different
Uh,
types of coffee? What's happening here? Are you a
Let's get the ice
coffee?
machine.
Not
What's
a
the word? You know, a
connoisseur of any kind.
sommelier.
No, man, 30 years in the dealerships, right? So it's always just black coffee. But you got the Keurig for the, like, I just need a cup now. You got the bun, which is the full pot, get the day started. And the other one's for any flavor stuff that you might need for the evening stuff.
All right, okay.
Is there a
got all-
soundtrack with
all
each
three
of those?
Right?
I feel like there's a playlist for each of the 3 things that you just described.
Right.
There is a
Well,
light
if
setting for
he's
that.
matching the dealership, he's got like classical music playing for the morning pot, right? Because like before, when just service gets there, it's classical music, and all of a sudden, it's like for the Keurig, it's like pop rock, which is very, very Keurig, right? And then
Right.
like the night crowd comes back and gets like smooth jazz, right? For the like,
Oh
There you
wow,
go.
really
stuff,
winding
right?
down. Or Bruno Mars, depending on which way, whether it goes up or goes down. Okay, I have a work question now.
Right on, let's do that.
Yeah, okay, fine.
I have a grown-up question. So I noticed that there is an Auto Genius member in your LinkedIn profile.
Mhm.
How did that come about?
So that came about one of our, prior to starting Relevant Dealer, I was working with a dealer group, which is out of
Okay,
Omaha.
that was the connection, because I was like,
Yep.
I know you can't get one of those unless.
Yeah.
So
So they've made us or made me their CMO for their group. And so he's just like, man, you got to check out this group, this Auto Genius group, man. Like, there's all kinds of great information that's coming on. And like, I want you to be able to utilize this for our marketing. So like, can you get into this group? So
I was like, all right, I'll see what I can do.
right.
That's awesome.
It's been great. I mean, it's opening my other window right now.
Nice. So are you like, you said 30 years in the dealership. Has it been
Yeah.
mainly around the marketing side of stuff that you've been in auto, or have you kind of touched everything at this point?
No, it's been pretty much everything. So I started off in a Ford Hyundai Isuzu lot in the great city of
Whoa.
Bend, Indiana.
I can never hear Isuzu without smiling because of Joe Isuzu. But go ahead.
Oh yeah, that was back when Hyundai was like terrible.
A
right?
combo,
Like, they
yeah.
forced me to sell 3 of their cars to the time that I was there. They were garbage, right? So anyway, I was with them. I started off there as sales, and then like within 9 months, I was out drinking one night with and met a couple of guys from this. It was a Chrysler, Plymouth, Dodge, Pontiac, Buick, GMC store, and we get to shooting this, the conversation around, and he's just like, "Hey man, like if you're half as good as I think you are, you should be our sales manager." So that started my first understanding of maybe I can't stay at the same dealership to gain that elevation, right? This is back obviously 94. So from there, I was a sales manager at a few stores and was a GM. And then later on in the career, God, this would have been about 12, 15 years ago. I had one of our partners I was working with who was a website builder. And he's like, I was out there on site, was working with him here in Elkhart, Indiana. He's like, by the way, I know of a group that's looking for an e-commerce director, basically newer or bigger group. They got like 13 stores here locally, whatever. So if you know somebody, they're actively looking. I'm like, cool. What's an e-commerce director?
Well, that was what, 2008 or something like that, right?
Yeah, real close to that. So
I
I was
mean,
like,
That was a real question.
that's a real question. Like we maybe had some internet managers out there that were just basically glorified leads people, right? But
Right.
like for a group to be thinking e-commerce director at that point, that's a very new question, right?
it was, but like anything in sales, I know 1% more than the owner did, and so I became their e-commerce director over the 13 stores.
Yep.
So,
Wow.
and I just started studying and figuring out everything that we could figure out as it was going on.
What was one of the coolest learnings that you had out of that like early time? Because that's
Ooh.
what did you like learn or see or do that maybe was bleeding or cutting edge that was still kind of like early could be wrong type stuff?
Yeah, so I think the first thing was really I was actually at a meeting with Audi, so it was one of the regional meetings, and we had 2 Audi stores at the time, and so they got into using behavior and using behavior analysis to determine how to deliver ads. And I was like, man, I read a couple of articles on that, right? Like I kind of get the gist of what that is. So as we were talking, they were asking questions, and the moderator, the speaker, really couldn't answer to them. So I was, raising my hand and like, hey, I know that answer. So they stopped me afterwards or at lunchtime, right before lunch, and said, hey, after the break, would you mind talking longer on that? Like, could you do like 30 minutes on this section? Sure. Right?
Like,
so it forced
okay.
me on the spot to start like digging into this thing, right? So my wife calls me while I'm doing it. I'm like, honey, I got to speak in like 20 minutes on behavioral analysis and how it relates to paid search ads. Like, I got to study up on this. You don't know what you're speaking on? I said, I didn't know I was speaking. Right? So, no, I didn't. But after that really started a really cool path for us, and really understanding how the behavior points and how we can measure them and then apply them back to paid search.
It blows my mind that before the internet, I mean, there were obviously people doing this. You have like, what was that music company that would send you a subscription in the
Columbia House.
Columbia House.
Yeah.
Like it's cool to hear how companies like that were tracking behavior pre-internet, but how, to your point, mainstream, most companies didn't realize, wait, there's more to a customer's behavior than walking on a lot and then leaving the lot without talking to anybody.
Right.
And just how many touch points there are. Have you seen any evolution of that behavior analysis from the time that you were first exposed to it to now? Like, are we able to track more, or is it still relevant or relatively the same?
Say relevant's a great word, but yeah, there has been a substantial change in that, right? So like one of the tools that we deploy allows us to be able to tell who's on the website, whether they complete a form or not. Right. So it's taking what we know, what's known about them through 2,700 other different data sources. Right. And it's creating like a profile of these people externally. So when that MAID's ID, that individual device ID, then visits the site, we already know a little bit about who they are, right? Including their name, their address, their phone number. And that allows us then to be able to create them into different segmented lists. And that really wasn't available 2.5, 3 years ago, at least, to marketing in general. We saw some applications, obviously, in the military and outside into the, the government issues, but nothing that we were able to access for marketing purposes. So getting down to that level, and really that's the new best thing, right, is creating the profiles of who the users are. So we're stopped talking about 30,000 visitors to the site, and we start getting into who these visitors are and why they didn't shop with us, and if they were really a shopper to begin with.
You've been around now and you've seen several transitions of technology, right? And the evolution over the last 20 years has been very regular, right? Mm-hmm. Every 6 or 7 years, something comes along that kind of changes the game, maybe even at a faster pace. Do you see any common threads between those and like to where we are right now? Obviously, right now we're in another one of those moments, right? A year or two ago, we thought Web3 was going to disrupt things faster, right? And it's doing things, right? And it is working in the background. But this whole conversation around AI and what that's going to do for the marketing ecosystem, if you think about all these transitions, do you see a common thread in how people typically react to them from a marketing standpoint? And you see like, oh, I see this pattern. Here it comes again.
Yeah, I think the one thing that that kind of coincides with that, right, which is how we find success with those, because really you can have two different programs that are running. One is very old school, old tech, using basic display ads and basic paid search ads, running them off an Excel spreadsheet, and be more successful than someone that's using fully programmatic, right? But it all comes down to how the dealership is ready to receive those customers when they're coming to the site. That's the biggest thing, right? So we talked to one of our dealers just the other day, and they're like, man, I feel like we're hitting everything to exactly where we should be. The web metrics all look great. We've got great engagement on the site. Our overall conversion rate is extremely high, but our sales aren't lifting, right? They're still not lifting. What's the problem? So I'm like, we say, hey, let's take a look through the CRM. Let's take a look at some regular metrics. Look at the the number of people that we're reaching out to. How many are we making contact with? How many are we asking for an appointment with? How many are they setting an appointment with? And how many of those people are showing up? All right, let's just look at basics for a minute. And it was unmistakable. I mean, it was a 50% increase that they can gain without spending any more money in marketing, just covering their basics.
What are some of the basics? Like, what's the low-hanging fruit out there for everyone listening?
Yeah, the two biggest things are phone and internet, right? A lot of dealerships on the phone side of things, they're not really tracking any of those calls that are coming in. Some have phone tracking services where they're going in and listening to them periodically, but they're not comparing that to the CRM, right? So they look at the end of the month and they said, oh, well, I had 20 phone ups for the month. 2 more than last month. We're doing better, right? But there's no way that phone only rang 20 times through the entire month.
Right.
Those
Yeah. Did
calls
we
aren't getting
connect,
logged.
like we got that person into a place that's trackable and we can actually measure whether or not we were successful on the end of it, for sure.
Correct. And then same thing on the internet side of it, right? Before the pandemic, before it was telling customers basically, if you don't like the MSRP of this vehicle, we don't have to sell it to you. We'll wait till the next person comes in, right? Because we're sold out 4 months, 6 months in advance. Inventories are rebounding, right? We're starting to see that every day. And we've got dealers that are now sitting with cars on the lot and going, man, I'm going to have to start discounting these again. When really the first step they need to do is take a look at their follow-up process. Are you even reaching out to these customers after they put a lead in? Or have you conditioned the team so much over the last 2 years that if someone's not responsive to you inside of 24, 48 hours, that it's a dead lead, kill it, move on to the next one. Right?
Man, it is. I've heard that multiple times. And what's scary to me is, and I don't know if you're seeing this, but I'm starting to hear this like, well, margins are starting to be compressed again, right? Volume isn't maybe quite where it was, or maybe it's just one or the other, not both. And there's a little bit of a recoil on marketing budgets out there. And we're recoiling on marketing budgets, yet we could expand them if process was great on the back end. Are you seeing some of that recoil, or at least like attempt to recoil in clients or dealers that you're working with?
Yeah, and I think that's sometimes where the challenge comes in for stores, right? Is that their sales process, their sales follow-up systems are managed usually by somebody different than the person that is doing their marketing for them, right? So there's often a lack of synergy or a blaming of each other, right? Oh, our sales are down. Oh, darn marketing. And marketing's like, oh, well, you're killing my budget. It's because you guys can't sell anything, right? Instead of someone to be able to look at those things holistically and to see what those challenges are. Right. Because again, if I spend another $10,000 in marketing, but my sales team isn't ready to deliver those, right, then I'm wasting that money into that. So recoiling that spend is generally not the answer. It's taking a moment, relooking at your processes, and making those changes for it. But yes, absolutely, we're seeing some folks who are saying, hey, we got to cut our spend by 30%. Why? Well, because our sales are down 30%.
Wow. Yeah. Right? Yeah. Which is like counterintuitive in my book, at least, right? I'm like, wait, sales.
You're a marketer.
I maybe need more people.
Because you're a marketer.
Well, it is a downward spiral,
the chicken
right?
and the egg, right?
Right. But it's a downward spiral. If you keep cutting your marketing, and because your sales are down, and you're not fixing your process, your sales are just going to keep going down.
Yeah, you can't cut your way to growth.
That's
just
correct.
Can't do it.
Yep. I mean, you see a way that this is happening day in and day out, where teams are gaming the CRM, right? So a lead comes in and they immediately mark it as lost because it shows that their response time was faster, and then it just like games the whole system, and then they forget that they need to go mark that as unlost when they actually try to go follow up with it. But by the time they actually try and go follow up with it, is actually lost because that person bought somewhere else.
Exactly. Or they
send
that clock.
Did I just strum a chord, Kyle?
I'm about to go like cry in a corner somewhere. Guys, just come find me, okay? All of these thoughts and feelings that are coming up in my head. So what is like when you go in, because as you're working with dealers, with Relevant Dealer, and you're, obviously you have clients, but when you go in and you're kind of like taking a first look at the way, strategy and campaign and process are, what are the things that you're doing first? Like if someone wants to take fresh eyes at their business, right, and kind of attack the things that are most likely places where they can find gaps, where would you encourage them to go look for those gaps first? And maybe it matches kind of like your process.
Yeah, so it depends on the client, right? So we've got some that utilize us as a fractional CMO. So essentially, we're taking care of their digital marketing decisions and helping them with make sure that they're getting the most out of their campaigns that they're running. Right, we're in a fractional scenario. Our first plan of attack is to look at their Google My Business listing, look at their directory listings, and look at their website, right? Because that's the foundation of everything marketing. If you're spending $10,000 a month to drive search traffic to a website that is rough, right?
Best,
You've got images that are broken.
Very kind.
Yeah, I mean, and you see all of that, right? Especially as you look through different dealer sites. And sometimes we'll proactively reach out to somebody and be like, dude, I was looking at your site, just happened to be looking at it as a competitive site to someone we're working with. And here's 5 things that, like, just fix them. Like, you don't even have to email me back. Like, you don't have to respond to me. Just please fix these things. Right?
Please, for the love of automotive, fix these things.
For the love of automotive. That's a great shirt.
That is, yeah. We had one guy that had his map view was showing that his dealership was in China. And we're like, how do you?
Oh my goodness!
Please fix
this. Like, man, and he's like, oh, we got the website handle. Don't worry about it. Cool. Show you're not in China. That's all I'm saying. Like, I mean, so we want to make sure they're on a very, very solid foundation, right? Directory listings, typically these folks have got, 10 or 15% of those that are claimed or are showing their information, and the rest of them are showing them really poorly, right? And that helps. There's all the things of all these different channels that a customer can find them on, making sure that they can actually contact them. Yeah. And then in their Google My Business listings, a lot of times they're not filling that out completely, or they don't even have their market areas that are indicated in there, or what model that, that they're a Hyundai dealer versus just a car dealer, or worse, a parts store. We've seen those as well. So once that foundation is laid, then we'll start talking to them about here's how we would devise that from there, right? But ultimately,
it's almost like when like, I don't know, bar rescue goes in. What do? They're like, okay, first of all, this place looks terrible. We're gonna make it look good, and then
change
we'll
that light bulb.
People in the process, like change the light bulb, make sure that
sweep
the lights
the floor.
turn. Yeah, sweep the floor. Like, that's what you're saying is like, hey, if people can't get in touch, if the digital showroom just isn't ready to receive someone, then we can't talk about sending the right people there, because they're just going to get lost along the way anyway.
Correct. And they're not going to see results from what we do.
Yeah.
Right. If we send another 10,000 people to that site, doesn't mean they're going to convert, and they won't.
Right. Yep.
Right.
Exactly.
They're going to lose interest pretty quickly. So yeah, that's a great analogy. I like that analogy with the bar rescue.
Cirillo's like, he's frustrated over here.
I'm enraged.
I'm insane with anger. You can tell.
I'm gnashing my teeth with rage.
Gnashing. It's pronounced gnashing, by the way.
Yeah, well, just similar to Kyle a few minutes ago, I'm like, I need to go lay down in the corner. That's what we're talking about right now.
I've been on all of these sites you're telling me about. Yeah. I've seen them.
But on that note, this has been so much fun.
It has been fun. This has been a blast. I love it.
Stephen Laureys, man, thank you so much for spending some time with us. How can those listening or watching get in touch with you?
Absolutely. They can reach out to me directly at steve@relevantdealer.com or visit us at relevantdealer.com.
Hey, thanks so much for joining us here on Auto Collabs.
Hey, thank you guys as well.
I've been waiting. I have recorded literally hundreds of podcasts in my career. And, there's a segue to this, because speaking of bragging, I have been waiting for an opportunity to put on all of my conference lanyards. And I forever owe Steve for giving me the opportunity to do that.
Yeah. Look, you guys could probably go toe to toe. Have you done 70? What did he say? 74 conferences? You think you've been there?
I don't think I have 74. I don't have 74.
That's a lot. That's a lot of moving around. So
I'm going to count. I have to count them now.
What you can tell is, like, some people go to conferences like straight up for the community. That's all they're doing. And when I say community, I really mean the drinks after the conference. And some people go to do some real learning, and it's very clear that Steve has done some clear learning. Like the fact that he said, hey, look, the early days of driving sales, those were my favorite. Like, he's going to take notes and implement things when he goes to all these conferences. And you can tell, like, even just his approach is like, hey, every once in a while, I'll be on a competitive dealer site find 5 things wrong and just tell them they don't even have to email me back. This is a free gift. Like, please just go fix
For the
it.
love of automotive.
For the love of automotive, he just cares for the industry in that way. And being around 74 industry events over 10 years, kudos to him. Goodness.
That's a lot.
I love like hearing about some of those guys that were here for the early days of e-com and internet in automotive. Like it brought to my mind the late Ralph Paglia, who in a similar vein was like one of the first guys who ever started wrapping his head around e-com and had this hilarious story. He's like, one time at a conference, he's like, "Hey Michael, you want to know how to get allocation from the OEM?" I said, "What?" He's like, "Well, when they redesigned the Corvette, I took in $500,000 of down payments." And Chevy had to come back and be like, no, I don't think you could do that. He's like, "Well, now we got to deliver Corvettes because I just have $500,000.
He's like, apparently I can.
Wow.
Yeah. Talk about digital retail back in the early 2000s.
Oh, man. Well, this was so much fun to spend some time with you. Thank you for tuning into Auto Collabs. And as always, on behalf of Kyle Mountseer, Michael Cirillo, and myself, we'll see you next time.
Sign up for our free and fun-to-read daily email for a free shot of relevant news in automotive, retail, media, and pop culture. You can get it now at ASOTU.com. That's ASOTU.com.